Hey, family, and welcome back to my channel, a Women's Heart Podcast, your go-to destination for exploring faith, inspiration, health, and personal growth. Today, we're honored to have an incredible guest joining us, all about redefining ambition and helping leaders thrive and expand their capacity. So get ready to be inspired as we delve into a transformative conversation with an amazing woman. Keep watching so you can get your blessing. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to Women's Heart Podcast, a wellness podcast where we explore faith, inspiration, health, and personal growth. And today we have an incredible guest joining us who is all about refining ambition and helping leaders strive without burnout or expanding. What is the word we're using?
We're expanding capacity.
Expanding capacity. She's an award-winning speaker, a professional certified coach, and the CEO of the Ambition Studio. So get ready to be inspired as we dive into a transformative conversation with the one and only Queirra Fenderson. Welcome to the show, Queirra.
Thank you so much, Edna. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be a great conversation because when the pre-conversation's good, the podcast conversation is going to be even better.
Absolutely. I love that. So let's jump right on in. I would love for you to tell us who you are and what makes you get up in the morning.
Mm, mm-mm. You know, I like to say that I'm a girl who loves the smell of fresh ambition in the morning. Let me tell you, I've been ambitious since a little child, from the years of playing Play-Doh with my mother, where she made a little ashtray and I made a whole girl walking across the bridge, to then being class president all the way through high school. I just knew that I had big dreams and I could achieve anything. And so going through life, I just was always after the next and the next. And I prided myself on being ambitious until I start hitting those roadblocks.
Yes.
So until I start experiencing how life really was, when things stopped coming as easily to me and I kept coming and having to do more effort, college, trying to get pregnant, going through marriage, the pandemic, having a COVID baby,
Right.
building this business and this company. At the heart of who I am someone who believes in myself and truly believes in others and knows the power of mental resiliency. I am a mom, a wife, a daughter. I call it multiple layers, right? We all have so
Yeah.
many layers within ourselves, but I'm a champion for people. I think I'm that intuitive guide that will tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it. And so my friends and family, they say, watch out. Don't go to Queirra unless you're really ready. They said, don't activate
You gotta
here.
be ready for the truth.
Listen,
That's
don't
right.
tell me a dream because I will hold you accountable and be right there by your side. But some people
Right.
don't want that level of accountability.
No.
So I'm just a really passionate, ambitious woman who is learning how to navigate it with my well-being.
I love that. That is such a great answer. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey though, with your background and passion, and how did you even get into the coaching space? How did you
Oh
get
my
into this
goodness.
space? What did that look
Coaching,
like?
coaching found
Give
me.
us all of it. Yes. Tell us
Yeah.
all.
Okay. Now, so I try to keep this story short,
Okay.
but coaching found me, and coaching found me because I graduated with a marketing degree, had a job before I was even out of college. Of course, ambitious. Was the youngest director in my company. Climbing that corporate ladder like a pro. Landed my dream job at a tech startup because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I wasn't ready for the risk. I needed certainty. So I thought, okay, God, I'll negotiate best of both worlds. I'll work at a tech startup. I'll get the entrepreneurial spirit, but I get
Mhm.
that steady paycheck. And
Yeah.
I knew, God knew. He was like, okay, let's
Do
see how that
both.
work out.
Right.
Right. And I had my side hustle. I was doing marketing for people on
Yeah.
the side and things. And 3 months into that company, I had lost my job. Now, I call that a brick moment because when I first started, it took me a year to get a new job in that economy. And I
Mhm.
continued to have little pebbles. I was the only woman of color in the firm. And there were little things that just kept happening that said, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And I ignored it because it took me a year to get that job. I wasn't going to leave. They was going to have to push me out. And they did.
Right. Right.
And
Mhm.
I got let go for not being a good cultural fit. And it was true. I was not a good cultural fit in many, many ways. And I remember sitting in that driveway on a Wednesday morning,
Mhm.
bawling, crying, refusing to go into my home because if I was at home back then, if I was at home on a Wednesday, I didn't have a job. I
Right.
remember I was on the phone with my mother and it got real quiet, and God said, "You will not go back." And I said to my mother, "Mom, God just said you will not go back." She said, "Then where are you going?" I said, "I don't know, but he's been telling me to start my own thing."
Like Abraham.
Yes, right?
That's right.
Just
Like
go.
Abraham. Hmm.
And so I thought I was starting a marketing consultancy. And through my research month after month, I found this thing called coaching. And I
Right.
found the International Coach Federation. And I realized that coaching was a real profession. It wasn't just, oh, I have this life experience. Let me give you some advice.
Right.
There's credentialing and education.
Hmm.
Long story short, got on the phone with a woman who had a coffee chat with me. She said, "Oh, you sound like you would be a great coach. The
Hmm.
program I attended, their registration closes tomorrow. Let me connect you with the registration person just for curiosity."
Hmm.
Within 24 hours, I had enrolled in a $16,000 program on unemployment.
Right.
And that is because my grandmother said, "Queirra, is coaching up and coming?" I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "If I would have went into computers when computers were up and coming, I would have had a completely different life." And
Right.
I made the mistake of telling your grandfather, and he wanted to keep me in the department store. So you go ahead and register.
Right.
Tell
Right.
your husband later.
I love that story. That is so good.
So yeah, I found myself in a 12-month coach training program,
Mhm.
paid for it by getting clients,
Right.
graduated at the top of my class with the credentials to become a professional certified coach. And I
Mhm.
was off to the races because God said you will not go back. And let me just tell you, I had to keep hearing that for the past 10 years in this business, you will not go back. And I
You got
have,
to tell yourself that as an
you
entrepreneur.
do.
So, and I was talking with another entrepreneur a couple of weeks ago at the conference, and we were looking at each other. She said, "I don't want to go back to Egypt. I have to stay in the promised land."
Yes.
I agreed,
Faith.
agreed.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's something about it. It allows you the autonomy and creativity to be who you are. There's no putting you in a box,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
sometimes that box looks fancy and
It
nice and
does with a
comfortable.
nice bow and gold on
Hmm.
it and all of that, right? It
Uh-huh.
does, but
But then when you realize you can build a bigger box or you can build something that's not even inside of a box, that potential to just, like you said, be creative and do whatever you want to do and
Mhm.
shift the way you want to shift. And that's a big thing. And what we talk about is in expanding your capacity, you need the flexibility to shift. And that's why it was important for me to always stay an entrepreneur and run this company.
Be able to pivot, yeah, and the
Yeah.
pivot is along the way, but it's also the learning as you are pivoting. You're learning how to get better at your craft. You're learning, learning parts about yourself that you didn't even know about, right? That's
Yes.
coming out, and God is like, oh, and it'd be something that'll fall in your lap. You're like, I didn't even think that way. So
Yeah.
it's a God moment, right? It's a divine moment of inspiration where you can see that. So I think it's a blessing. It's a blessing. It's hard, and it's all of that, but it's still the blessing, right? And I think
Yes.
the thing you said, Kiera, I love because you say get out of a box, but then you also now have the capacity to get other people out of the box, help
Yeah.
them climb out of the box themselves, because some people just need that little push, or they need a little inspiration or motivation, or some education on how to get out of the box.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
don't know.
And
So
to
they don't
keep
know what they don't know.
them out the box. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. I
Exactly.
have a
So,
client now. She's been so afraid to step out of the box, and she got one foot in and one foot out.
that
And I was
happens.
like, you're going to have to shift how you relate to yourself because there is no longer anyone holding you accountable and
Mhm.
having the self-discipline it requires
Right.
to stay outside of that box. And so it's going to be critical that you rely on yourself. And those are the skills we're developing. So, like you said,
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, you have to learn the skills, you have to build that resiliency. And I want to bring it back to faith
Mhm.
because
Oh, absolutely.
God is our business partner
Hmm.
day in and day out, every day you sit down, you plan, you figure it out, you ask God, where do I go? If he was the one that said don't go back, then he's going to be the one to continue to lead me. And when you lose that, that's when you lose yourself. That's when you get caught up in doing and potentially burning out because you're no longer being guided in alignment. That's a whole nother thing. But I
Yeah,
just
it's a
want to
whole
put
nother
that piece in there.
podcast too, and the faith walk
Yes.
in this thing, being an entrepreneur, just the faith alone, having the faith to get up every morning and know you're gonna hit the ground running, and whatever that looks like, that God says, connect with this person, or connect with that business, whatever that looks like, strategically, collaboratively, it doesn't matter. But if you listen to that still small voice, he will guide you. He will guide you. And you have to recognize it. Like, don't think it's yourself. Because when you think it's yourself, you're doing it out of fear. But when you know it's God, that's when you can walk in faith.
Yes, absolutely. I taught a course for 5 years about
Mhm.
strengthening your inner intuition. And I had to meet people where they were because not everyone is faith-based. Not everyone was
Mhm.
brought up in that
That's true.
space. I remember meeting a young woman and she said, I love what you taught, but I'm having a really hard time connecting it because the word God wasn't even mentioned in my home. I don't even understand that concept.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so where do you feel most connected to something higher than just yourself? She said, out in nature. I said, then for right now, we're going to call it nature. And when you go out in nature and you sit in quiet and peace and you start to feel that energy and you start to hear that voice,
Mhm.
start to speak to it, have that relationship, right? Because you can build it based off of your upbringing. So you're
Right.
absolutely
Right.
right. But most people, especially high performers, they
Mhm.
only rely on what they do. They rely so much on what they can execute and what goals they can hit, and they miss
Yeah.
that really important piece around the guidance.
Yeah, because that's something that I saw just recently out on LinkedIn. There was a entrepreneur who was doing spiritual leadership,
Hmm.
taking the leaders back to their spirituality, connecting to that. Because I
Mm.
thought that is so awesome. There's a
Yeah.
piece there, that you can't miss it. Because you miss it, you'll miss the intuitiveness of being able to move forward in your instinct to connect with that. So it was so good when I saw. I was like, that is so good that she's led a conference on spiritual leadership.
Wow. And I love that we can do that now
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
years and years ago, decades ago, that was taboo. Even just saying the word
right,
intuition, even
right.
be able to bring it up anything that wasn't physical was
Mhm,
taboo. So now I love that we're shifting. And a lot of the newer generations too are starting to talk more about spirituality and your
mhm.
being. I love that it's critical
And the connection with the
in the
power.
connection. Yeah.
I call it my connection to the light. So I've
Okay.
always had that, and I talk with women all the time in terms of what that looks like. It looks different for each person,
Good.
but knowing it's like the knowing that the connection is there, and that's the presence of God. When you have your meditation, when you're doing your Bible study, whatever you're doing for quiet time with Him, to
Yes.
be in His presence, that's a connection right there.
Yeah.
So I
Oh, I feel like we could go on and on.
we could, but we got to keep going. And let's
Okay,
end this
okay.
conversation. So, Kiara, you work centers, your work centers around helping professionals and entrepreneurs break from that what we call free from or analysis paralysis or perfectionism to achieve those purposes and passions without burnout. So, what's one common misconception about ambition that you frequently encounter? And you help your clients reframe it. So what does that look like? How do you
Such a
do
great question. The most common challenge I see among a lot of the clients we serve is that they have to do it separate and alone. There
that?
is
Mm,
something about the level of independence that
hmm.
high performers have, that
Yeah.
they have such a distant or negative relationship to support. And so the way that typically shows up is they'll set this high standard, this big goal.
Mhm.
They usually won't share it with anyone because in
Ah,
their mind, keep it close to their chest. They go off in their own focus, go do what they need to do. But here's what happens. Number one, when you're doing it alone, you don't have any measure of reality. Sometimes, as a high performer, you could set the bar so high, you don't even factor in the other things that are going on in your life. You don't
mm-hmm.
factor in if the timeline makes sense. You have no other perspective around bringing it down to a reasonable state. And we know smart goals, you have to have realistic expectations.
Hmm.
So they
Hmm.
don't have a realistic goal. But then, secondly, they're out here eliminating all other parts of life because they're just focused on this one goal. So their relationships start to fail, their friendships start to fall off, their fitness goals, right? There's so many things that they have just put blinders to because they think they have to go at this separate and alone. And they get into their analysis paralysis, they get into their perfectionism. And so
Hmm.
the first place we start is looking at what's your relationship to support? What does
Mm,
accountability look like?
right, right.
Right. And I'm talking to a client right now where she's really struggling with accountability because she has a habit of separate and alone, which means she knows the things that she wants to do and she'll do it come hell or high water. But
Right.
because she's in a coaching relationship, my role is accountability with her, and her spouse is also trying to support her. She
Mm-hmm.
hasn't really set up the structures for the support to come in. So any type of support check-in feels like pressure to her. Where
Right.
she if
Because
she
it's
could
like,
just do
oh,
it.
I got to get this. I got to be on point.
Yeah, I have to show up
Text
perfect
message.
with them,
Right, right.
right?
Like
And
a
so I,
performance review.
yeah, and that's exactly
Hmm.
what it is. It's performance, right?
Hmm.
But if she was to take a step back and say, okay, what type of accountability structure works for me? So I usually recommend two forms. It's either rewards or consequences. I prefer
Hmm.
rewards because I don't
Right,
want to be punitive, but some people are
right,
hard heads. I'm a hard head. I got to be
right,
smacked across the head. I need consequences. I know what
right,
I
right.
need. But being able to reward yourself along the way as well helps to not make that perfectionism larger. Rewarding yourself for the milestones, being clear around those metrics, and bringing other people in, letting your friends and spouses know, hey, I'm really working on getting this promotion right now. So even when they see you, they can check in and just say, hey, girl, how's it going? And you have a
Right,
space to be able to vent and share or get a new perspective around what's going on instead of feeling like I only can share with people when I got the trophy in the hand.
right.
So
When
I
you
will say
living
separate
it,
and
you're living
alone.
in that space by yourself, basically.
Yes,
So,
yes. And they look at it as a badge of honor.
mhm.
But that comes from conditioning, right? If you've been a high achiever, you've been the top student,
Yeah.
straight A's,
Been
we
there,
don't
done that.
collaborate in school, that well, we used
You
to,
just
they
go.
collaborate now. Yeah, you just go and
Yeah.
do what you need to do. So
Mhm.
that's what we see often in terms of that space is not bringing in support.
Yeah, and that's so critical. And you got to bring in the right support because I talk about one of the
That's so true.
trainings that I do is about, mindset reset, but then there within that component, we talk about having the right tribe and the right people
Hmm.
around you. So
Hmm.
when you're sharing, you want to be sharing with the right people that are going to be able to support you in the way you need that support. And that's the one that's going to say, I don't know about that girl, or trying to help you
And
get off the ledge. Because
yes.
sometimes when you have a dream, you have to be very, very protective of the dream and who you share it with.
Yeah, that reminds me of when I lost my job. I told y'all the story before.
Hmm.
About a month into being unemployed and building the marketing consultancy I thought I was going to build, I connected with my friend and I
Hmm.
told him the story about God. I was so excited. And he was
Hmm.
like, I don't know if you want to do that. That's a good paycheck. What you gonna do? X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And I said, oh, well, it's already done. This happened a month
Hmm.
ago. He thought I was
Right.
telling him fresh.
Right,
But you're
right.
right, because in that moment, I just thought everybody was going to champion what I was doing. But
Hmm.
I had to have the mental resiliency to say, okay, cool, don't tell him about entrepreneurial stuff because
Exactly.
usually they're just trying to protect you from their own fears.
They are.
They
That's
would never
exactly
do
what it
it,
is. Yeah,
you
that's
know?
exactly what it
So let
is.
them have their little space. Okay,
Hmm.
cool. I will talk. We won't be talking about my entrepreneurial stuff. We can talk about other stuff. You know what I mean? You just
Right.
don't have the risk tolerance that I do, and that's okay.
Exactly, exactly. And it scares people because sometimes people want to do what you're doing, but they don't know how to, and they see you doing it, so it makes them see themselves of, okay, if she can do it, why can't I do it? So it makes them
Yep.
question, their own dreams. So there's a book out called The Dream Giver. I don't
Oh,
know
I don't
if
know
you've
that one.
ever read it before.
No.
So good. By the same guy that wrote The Prayer of Jabez.
Okay.
Rick Warren, I believe his name is. But it is an excellent book. It talks about entrepreneurship and how it's a little guy called Ordinary that decided he wanted to become extraordinary, and
Oh,
all of these boundaries and barriers that were in his way. He had to break through all of that. And one of them was called border bullies. And that's where the people who don't want you to move forward start to bully you and trying to bring you back. So
yes,
it's good, Kiara. You got
girl.
it's a small book, but it's powerful. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and I tell them, I say, if you don't read any book, make sure you read that one. Because that
No.
book, it speaks to you from that perspective of, even having the desire to want to be in that space and move
Yep.
forward. It's a lot of courage. You have to pull a lot of courage and a lot of faith. So
I gotta add to that because that border bullies piece. Woo!
that's real. And it's
That's
real,
so real.
and they have these different border bullies. The mom was the border bully. The
Yes.
best friend was a border bully. It was like, oh my goodness, people that you would think that were going to be in your corner and support you, push you up, and guide you, were the ones saying, "Hey, we need you to come back and be the person you were 5 years ago because we're used to that. We
Let
don't
me
want
tell,
you to change."
let me tell you, I wonder if they have this character in the book too, because I've experienced this in 10 years in entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship has ups and downs, as we
Yeah.
all know, right? And um, I experience being within a community that for some reason just got stuck in this space of the economy's bad or business is
Yeah.
hard and everything
People.
else.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And
Mhm.
they no longer have the growth mindset where you think
Mhm.
you're around entrepreneurs who are creative and they're
Yep.
growing. And then once you get that, it's a trauma bond when we all go through
Yeah.
something
You.
hard
Yep. Yep.
and you get bonded around it and you don't realize that now you're in group think. And then you got to break free and let go of that
Yes,
whole
ma'am.
community and then make yourself a small fish in a big pond again instead of being in that small pond as a big fish. And you don't
Yeah,
really, and that comes with the levels of entrepreneurship. So I had to
it
break
does.
free from that. It was hard. It was
It's
hard.
elevating because you gotta be able to recognize it first, which it sounds like you
Exactly.
did, and then elevate yourself out of that. Once you elevate yourself out of that, then you got the next level, which is raise the standard every day.
Yeah.
You gotta
And build
work.
a whole new community too.
Exactly. You got to, and you got to find people, and you start to find those people. You do. Once you're
Yeah.
open to it, it's like, okay, even if that one person we meet once a month, I have strategy calls all month long with different people that I met along the way that
Yeah.
think exactly like I do, and we support
Yeah.
each other's dreams. One woman, she said, "I want us to be dream partners." Right. And I was like, well, what is that? And she explained that to me. And so her name is Edna too. And
Oh,
we encourage
perfect.
each other once a month. Literally, we get on a call, and I'm like, so what's going on with you? And she'll say, what's going on with you? And then she's like, okay, well, have you thought about this? Or have you thought? So having those types of people in your corner is so critical. And I promise you, Kiera, sometimes it ain't gonna be your family.
Oh, it definitely gonna be. Oh my God. My family can't even. I had this company
They're
for
like, what
10
are you
years
doing
and they
now?
still
Why
don't
why are
know.
you
Yes.
changing again?
They don't know. They still
Right.
can't articulate. And you know what? And bless their hearts for that. And that is okay.
Yeah, because they
So I
want to
have other
protect you, and I
communities.
get it, but you got to
Yeah.
let me grow. You got
Yeah.
to let me grow to the extent of I see from faith perspective, and then also your vision. Everybody's not going to see your
Oh
vision.
gosh, no. Everybody doesn't even have a vision.
Exactly. So it's okay.
Mm,
So
mm.
we'll get
Yeah.
back to this question. So you're really renowned for captivating speaking style that combines vulnerability and wisdom. So how
Yeah.
do you leverage your own experience and vulnerabilities to create such an immersive and authentic connection with your audience during your keynotes and your workshops?
Let me tell you. Um, Vulnerability is a superpower for anyone. And when you're standing on a stage, sharing with hundreds of people some
Mhm.
of the most vulnerable moments, it's only possible when you have done the work around those moments.
Right.
And I often find that vulnerability isn't shared because we don't do the work. We're not, going to therapy or processing it through and really learning from those experiences. And when I'm able to share some of the most vulnerable moments, having been let go from my job,
Mm.
having, experienced IVF for 2.5 years, having,
Explain what that is, because everybody doesn't know what that is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
when we started to try to conceive, we
Mhm.
found out that we had male infertility. And
Mm.
that is, and so IVF is in vitro fertilization. So
Mhm.
it is the process of medically creating an embryo and then impregnating the woman with the
Mhm.
embryo. It
Okay.
is a very long process, lots of
Yes.
medications,
Yes.
lots of loss, lots of expense, lots
Yeah.
of time. And I was 3 years into the business when we got that diagnosis. And oftentimes, women are the ones who are thought to have the infertility issue.
Mhm.
And that's just the stereotype because more times than not, there's male infertility, which means maybe the swimmers aren't swimming the way they need to be swimming, right? And so, as an ambitious woman,
Mhm.
someone who's a high achiever who gets what she wants, to
Mhm.
then have to go through this really invasive and long process to conceive, and it wasn't due to my infertility, my ego was. bruised. When
Right.
I tell you I had to go to therapy, I
Mhm.
had to negotiate with myself in the business. My husband is completely fine with me sharing this story because he thinks more people should know about male infertility. I have
Mhm.
girlfriends whose
It's
husbands are
important.
going through it as well, right, to
Yeah.
normalize it.
Yeah.
Um, but therapy was so important because there were very real moments where I had to choose pouring into the business or getting pregnant. When you
Right.
go through a fertility cycle, it's months of physical stuff to your body and your emotions and loss, and the focus is on getting pregnant. So my vision and my goals for the business, they needed to take a back seat for a little bit, and it
Mhm.
was off and on and off and on. And I remember my therapist said, Queirra, you're now going into your third cycle. So that means we've tried 3 times
Right.
to get pregnant. It took 5 to actually get there. And she said, based off of what the doctor said,
Mhm.
we're getting close, but you're going to need to choose the business or a baby.
Right.
And
Right.
I was kicking and screaming because I loved my first baby, which was the business. And she said, it's
Mhm.
just temporary. And I said,
Right.
fine, we'll go all in. I restructured the whole company so I
Mhm.
wasn't as high in demand. So there was
Right.
scalability. I brought different team members on to support us. And then I
Mhm.
just went in and focused on this baby. And I'm so blessed and grateful that I did
Mhm.
because then it also gave me a business model that was more sustainable for when I became a mom. But I
Exactly.
shared that
Exactly.
story because
That's true.
like those are things people hide IVF, people hide infertility. And when I'm able to share vulnerably on a stage, it just releases pressure in the audience. And then in most of my engagements, unless it's a keynote, I'm able
Mhm.
to do some audience interactions in the questions and you know this, Edna,
I
the
know.
questions and the coaching that comes
Mhm.
out of it. I get to transform people's lives because I was vulnerable enough to share with them, hey, you're safe with me.
Right.
In,
And
in,
they need
in,
to
in
know
this
that you're
environment.
building a safe space for them to ask the question, because
Yes.
what you've gone through, other people may have gone through as well. And like you said, some people want to hide that. They don't want to share it. It's personal, it's very personal. So when you start to share yours, it opens up a whole space for other women to say, well, I want to ask the question. I want to share too, so it makes
Yes, you
it
got to normalize vulnerability. Maybe not with everyone and not all spaces, because I know
not all spaces, but
not all
in
spaces. Some
all
people tell it
spaces.
too much.
Yeah,
But
you
when,
got to learn to do that too as a speaker. It's like too much information. They may not be able to handle that.
yeah, and I
And
speak
you
in
got to
front of a
have
lot of women
certain
audiences.
stories, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Certain
yeah,
stories
yeah.
you share. But no, I agree with that. That's really good. And thank you for, continuing because you got a beautiful 5-year old now that out of
Yeah.
all of that you were able to conceive and then be blessed with a baby. So what a
Yes.
blessing.
Thank you. It's such a
Yes.
blessing. It's
Yeah.
hard, but it's a blessing.
Yeah, yeah, having children is a lifelong bond. So yeah, there you
Yes,
go.
yes, yes,
It
yes.
doesn't stop after she get 18 either. Let me just tell you
I
that. Whole
heard.
different kind of prayer. Whole different kind of prayer for the grown folks, for the grown kids. Okay,
I
that's
heard.
real. That is a real thing. So, but it is a thing, and it's something that as a mom myself of 3, I recognize now as they're grown people, grown folk. I call them
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
prayer is different. It's more coaching and more mentoring and more guidance, sharing, listening a lot more because they're
Okay.
grown now. You don't always have to fix their problems. So you'll see, you got,
Yeah.
you got many more years to go, but it's coming. It's all good though. Every phase of being a mom is amazing.
I'm excited for it. I
Yeah,
am. And I appreciate the advice. I take every single parent that have come before me's advice because all the cliches are real.
it's a
Every
real
cliche
thing.
about parenting is real because it is real. Believe what they say. And I think that
Mhm.
wisdom and advice are the best things to help me prepare for what's to come, you
Right.
know?
And there's no blueprint. That's the thing. Recognizing that each is case by case. Each child is different. Each parent is different.
Yep.
There's no straight blueprint. I know they write all these books, but mostly it's you navigating that with that individual personality because they were born to be different. They weren't born to be little
Right.
us's, or little mini
Yeah.
me's. So we got to recognize that in that. So
I appreciate that.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. So
sure.
your balance and your that balance ambition framework. Let's talk a little bit
Mhm.
about that. That's a
Yeah.
program that focuses on expanding capacity, mastering ambition in a hybrid world now.
Yeah.
So what unique challenges or opportunities are present for leaders trying to balance ambition and what actionable insights can you share for navigating it successfully?
Well, yeah, balance ambition, our framework is born from the belief that work-life integration is possible. And I know a lot of people don't like to believe in work-life balance, but that's because they're looking at it from a completely different lens.
Hmm.
In our framework, we really focus on three core things: the tactical, the practical, and the enjoyable. And oftentimes, when we're thinking about work-life integration or work-life balance, everyone goes to the spa days, the bubble
Hmm.
baths, the PTO, and they're skipping the most important pieces, which is around their health and their exercise, making
Yeah.
sure that they're getting their mental health support, making sure that they have the community, like we talked about, the right people around them. Those are the foundational elements. And when you're in a hybrid world, that can be even more difficult. Like some of our clients we've talked to, and I would just say, have you gotten out the house today? Because it's so easy to be at home, working behind a computer screen, thinking you're connecting with people,
Hmm.
visually through Zoom. But when you go out and you're physically feeling the aura and the energy from someone else, that feeds you. The sun shining on your skin, it feeds you.
Hmm.
And those are the really basic things that are really important in hybrid work. Now, look,
Hmm.
hybrid's also great because there's a lot of flexibility, right? So you
Yeah.
can get things done around the house or go and step away to do some caregiving for someone you may be responsible for. But at the same time, there's the limitations of you're not able, especially if you're in a workplace, you're not able to have those side conversations. You're not able to build those deeper relationships. You have to be much more intentional. And then your visibility is something that is definitely different within the organization, depending on how large of an organization you're in. Like
Right.
if you're in, a 30,000 employee company, which is already difficult to navigate, just walking through the halls, imagine having to set up all the one-on-ones to have these virtual conversations. So I
Mhm.
usually encourage a number of things. Number one, don't hide behind the computer. Sometimes you
Been
can
there,
pick up,
done that. I've done it.
yeah,
I've been
right. We
guilty of
all
it. It's
have.
like it just feels so good, Just
It's so easy. I
yes,
could be
it
cute
is.
from the top and down here I got sweatpants on, right? It's so
I've
easy.
been doing that. Yeah, I remember COVID. I mean, we all were hide behind a computer at some level because we couldn't go nowhere. So it's like, and I
We
think that
couldn't.
some of that has spilled over into now, where we're like,
Yeah.
no one wants to let that go. It's like, I really just want to, be able to do that. And so, but things have to shift.
They have to shift. And that's the one thing too. I think everyone thought we were going to live in that world, but they weren't feeling the energetic drain. And I
Right.
remember when I was first out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to start working outside the house just because. I'm just going to go
Just
sit
to
at the
have the
library or
connection.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to feel the buzz of there is life outside of these walls,
Mhm.
especially the walls you create.
Exactly.
But then even as you're navigating, so one of the things that happens a lot with clients is they have a difficult time like navigating the corporate structures of relationships. And I said, don't rely on Zoom. Pick up the phone. I'm telling you, picking up the phone, randomly calling somebody for a 5-minute quick, let me ask you a
Mhm.
quick question. That is like a personal relationship, private conversation. You don't have to worry about
Mhm.
anything being recorded. You don't got to see each other's face. It's just relating to somebody old school, like if I was to bump into you in the hallway.
Right.
And then lastly, I will say, I know that a lot of organizations are doing return to work or they'll do one day in the office and people are like, I don't want to sit through that commute. But think of it strategically as your opportunity to differentiate and increase your visibility. When there is a
That's good.
networking opportunity where
Yeah.
you could just show up for 30 minutes, just show
Mhm.
your face, shake the hands, and leave. Visibility is key in a hybrid world because not everyone's willing to show up. And when you walk in that room, and I just did a post on LinkedIn about this, and the last thing I'll
Mhm.
say is it's not just okay to be in the room. You must engage. If you need to have 5 questions in your back pocket, have those questions. If you're going to a conference or a seminar, go ask a question. Stand up and introduce yourself because visibility looks different now. And since we're
Yeah.
all hiding behind our computers, we need these little opportunities to say, hey, I'm here and pay attention to me, especially if you're trying to get a promotion or grow
Right.
your business.
Exactly. How they gonna know who you are if you just hide behind a computer, don't say nothing. It's real
Yeah.
though. I think too, my kids laugh at me because the grocery store is my release. Like
I
when
hate the
we go to the
grocery
grocery
store. Oh
store
my
because
gosh.
I have to get out every day. So and then to make myself get off the computer by 5 o'clock because
Uh-huh.
I don't want to work in the nighttime. I've done that, been there, done that, got the burnout.
Yes.
So I've learned to balance my day. So my daughter's like, Mom, you really gonna have to let go of this whole thing going to the grocery store. I said, but it is my way of decompressing. And I
Girl,
get to talk to people and I get to look at stuff. And so that's that. I know it sounds weird, but that's my thing.
no.
That's what I do.
I hated the
I need to
grocery
date.
store. But you know what's so funny? I remember when it was like, so I had our daughter in COVID. And so it had got to stir crazy level. And I think
Right.
we were coming out of COVID.
That's
And
a
she was
lot too, Kiara. Let's back that up because was your husband able to be there with you? That's the first thing. Because a lot of women weren't able to bring their husbands when they had the
so
baby.
so I didn't have so fortunately they shut the world down when my daughter was 3 months old. So
Okay.
we didn't know it was
Okay.
coming.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then she was here. So as soon as, that little cusp were like, okay, everybody can come see the baby. They were like,
Yeah.
"Mhm." So I didn't even know what
Right.
community in a village was like because I
Right.
wasn't allowed to bring anybody in the bubble. And then my whole mentality was afraid that, we could get this deadly virus and I have this little newborn. It was rough.
That was, yeah, that was, yeah.
I don't
That
even
you
know
had to
what
be
real
very
parenting is
protective.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember we got to like the second year where we were kind of coming out. It was safer to go to the grocery
Mhm.
store,
Yeah.
that space. And my daughter was going through the twos where she was just a little bit challenging at night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know what else to do. I said, babe, I was talking to my husband. I said, you got this? He goes, yeah, I got this. I said, I'm gonna go spend some time in the grocery store. And we went to the
So
grocery
it's
store.
not just me, right?
It was
Everybody
not you. I
was
was there for
touching things
2 hours
and seeing what's new and oh
bumping
yeah,
into
because it's
neighbors.
such a release.
Yeah, I was chit-chatting with a neighbor. I saw like three
It's like,
neighbors.
oh,
She's showing me stuff. Girl,
right,
it felt like I was at the mall.
I love it. But no, it is a real thing that we got to, whether it's the grocery store or just getting out for a walk on the,
Yes.
even when I take my walk in the morning, my husband's like, "Did you see the people you usually see?" I was like, "I
Uh-huh.
really did," or "No, I didn't
Yeah.
see this couple," or because it's something about connecting with
Have
people
to.
on a more, face-to-face level as opposed to behind the computer. I mean, it's just a big,
Yeah, you can't because when you and I connect face to face, it's just we buzzing all day. Boom, 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 boom.
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
different than the computer because your energy can't get through the computer.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So with that, did you answer the question? I don't even remember because
I
we
think because we're talking about hybrid world. So that's what I was just
okay.
thinking.
Yes,
I
the
said,
question,
did I
thank you,
go
thank you, thank you.
back?
Okay. So the Ambitious Studio aims to improve employee retention and safeguard talent pipelines by
Yeah.
offering executive coaching and leadership development. So what's a good key strategy you recommend for organizations looking to prevent expanding capacity among their top performers,
Yeah.
especially diverse talent in world and women in male dominated industries? And let me just say expanding capacity, is that the right word you want me to use there? Because I know initially we were talking about burnout, but you're using this word differently. Burnout's used differently.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, burnout is a real thing, and I think
Yeah.
people are really starting to experience it a lot post-pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, I I like to focus on how we can expand your capacity to
I like
prevent
that.
burnout, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes that comes after you've already burned out.
Yeah.
Usually you don't know that you've burned out until you burned out. You don't know you're in recession until the recession's here. And so we're focused on how to expand your capacity, how to set up your life differently, how to set up your career aspirations differently so that we can't give you more time in the day, but it's about how you're fueling your energy in your body and your mindset and your resiliency and all of those critical factors that allow you to be with more, to allow you to be able to hear difficult news and it not take you out for the whole day, allowing
Right.
you to be able to navigate. I have this thing going on with my child, but I also have this really important deadline,
Right.
and rest your nervous system so that you can be present to make really strong decisions in both areas. That's capacity expansion. I
Hmm.
think sometimes when we think about burnout prevention, we think about taking care of yourself, which is very important. But it's one thing to prevent, it's another thing to create. Like we talked about with the box, we can
Mhm.
create the prevention box. What I want to do is make sure that you can expand because as we grow, as we get older, the layers just continue to add on. You might have been early professional and all you had to focus on was your career. And then you get a spouse. So now you have a romantic relationship. And then you may choose to have a family. And now you have these young people who are dependent on you. And
Right.
then your parents start to age. And now you're in the sandwich generation and so
Mhm.
forth and so forth. So you're going to continue to evolve. So, how do you expand your capacity to do so? And if you are a people leader, and you're
Mhm.
watching your team, It's really important that you're paying attention to the smaller things, the canary in the coal mines, right? When are
Mhm.
you getting those emails from your team members?
Mhm.
Are they after hours? How
Right.
are they responding to maybe difficult information, difficult news? How often are they taking their PTO? When you're having these one-on-ones, if you're having them, if you're not, please have one-on-ones.
Right. That's so important.
At
That's
this
so
point, I
critical.
can't, and we're still dealing with that. We're still dealing with a lot of organizations and people leaders not having the time to have one-on-ones with their team members. But if you're not having those one-on-ones and letting the team member lead the
Mhm.
one-on-ones and creating a genuine, vulnerable relationship with them, you're never going to see the warning signs because they're going to have it all buttoned up. And like I said before, share vulnerably. If the news that came down from the top is not something you completely agree with, or it's going to be difficult for you to also integrate into your life, share that in a professional way to say, hey, I know I'm working on how to figure out how to make this work in my life as well. How can I support you? Here are some of the ideas that I'm doing, right? Like for return for work, as an example.
Mhm.
I won't go too long into this answer, but I will say, in working with organizations who have mandated return from work, they've
Mhm.
seen their employee engagement tank. And that's because
Right.
from the top, they're just saying, you need to come into work now. We'll give you coffee,
Right.
cookies,
Right. We'll let you
pizza,
meet at the
bring
water
your
cooler
dogs.
again.
Yeah, yeah, you can
Have
sleep
that
here if you want.
conversation that you used to have, at the water cooler.
Yeah. And they think, but they're not giving them the tools to say, here's some things to think about for caregiving. Here's
Right.
some things to think about with whatever other implication. Here's an open forum to just talk about what are the issues you're going to have to navigate through now that you went from 5 years of remote work to instant return to work. So I would really encourage individuals, especially people leaders, HR, people culture
Mhm.
leaders, to lead by example, really start to listen to the key small things
Mhm.
that are making attrition so much higher in their company and track the
Mhm.
metrics. Look at who's
Yeah.
leaving.
Yeah.
Really
That's important.
understand what they look like, what's the demographic, and
Mhm.
get some outside help because you're inside the culture. So you need
Right.
outsiders like you and I and
Yeah. To
to
come
come
in and
in
work
and
with you.
say, yeah, here's what's
Mhm.
going on.
Well, the speed of the leader is the speed of the game. So if the leader, and
Mhm.
I can tell you this working at a management consulting firm for about 3 years before, everything just kind of shifted. The speed of the leader was that she worked to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. So everybody, and it was this unwritten rule that
Yep.
everybody must follow the speed of the leader. And it was like, okay, how sustainable is this thing? Where
Yes.
you find yourself working at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning because you're trying to get an email in or IM in so people could see you were online. That's
Girl.
really what it was. And I thought, this is crazy.
And that was me. When I was an early professional, I didn't
Yes.
know. My
Well, we
VP
don't
was,
know. You don't know,
yeah.
but you don't know. But I recognize it was because the leader was doing
Yep.
that we felt like we had to do that as well. And I thought, this doesn't sit, this didn't fit, it no longer fitted who I was. So
Yeah.
eventually I, resigned and went on to another company. But
Yep.
I always promised myself I would never get back into that game. It's a headspace.
Yeah. And
It's,
then you don't know what's going on with the leader that's making them do that because when I was in that space,
that's
my
right.
leader was working 12-hour days every single day.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
was too. Probably about 3 or 4 years later, she got a divorce from her husband.
yeah, that's what was
And
going
so
on.
if you were
So
going through a
it's that
bumpy
background stuff
road,
that you don't know. And
that's
I
what I'm
remember
saying. Yep.
just recently working to looking at things, and someone said to me, she said, well, I'm a workaholic, and I felt like,
Yeah,
I
and
probably don't
owned
want to
it.
work with you, but she owning it, but I don't want to work with you because if you're a workaholic, guess who's going to be a workaholic under you,
Yep.
because you've set the tone like that. And so being recognizing it is one thing, but doing something about it's a whole nother ball game,
Oh, another thing.
so and recognizing that you can't put that type of pressure on your people that are working under you or with you because they're gonna leave. That's really what happens. It's like, okay, I think this is not sustainable, especially women who have children who really want to be in their lives and doing those things with their children.
Yeah.
They end up transitioning out of a role like that because it's not sustainable.
Yeah, especially in predominantly male industries too.
Right, right,
Because predominantly male industries, you're already trying to prove yourself to a
right.
group of
Now
people who
you got
don't
this going
understand
on.
you.
Yeah.
Yep. And then now, and so, I mean, that's why we primarily focus on like tech and energy construction. We really want to help these women in these predominantly male industries because
Mhm.
they have an affinity for them. They're engineers, for example, right? And so they really love the work, but I don't want them to feel like they have to conform to a male dominant culture. I want to
Right.
show them how we're highly intuitive. We know how to navigate and read rooms differently. We know how to hold our feminine energy differently. So you don't always have to show up in posture. There are ways that you can approach things and respond to things and put certain boundaries out there that make sure that you're still effective, but you're not playing the game with them in
Right.
that space. And you're carving out space for a women's style of leadership in a predominantly male industry.
And be okay with it.
And be
Stand
okay
in your
with it.
truth. Stand in your truth
Lead it.
because that's who we are. As women, we got to do that. Got to stand in our truth. So I
Yeah.
got one more question. And I
Okay.
promise you. I know you're busy, but I got this question. Share one of your three critical areas leaders need to master to strengthen their self leadership, particularly when things
Mm,
are getting challenging.
I mean, I think we touched on it before.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
really listening to that inner voice. It's really being able to understand that, overthinking and analysis paralysis is really loud. It's
Hmm.
screaming at you. It's persistent. It's
Right.
that voice in your head that's constantly saying, what if? And you have to practice
Mhm.
moments of solitude and silence,
That's
taking a
important.
breath, right? We talked about this before the podcast too. Two
Mhm.
minutes. Abraham Hicks calls it segment intending, where you go from one meeting, you pause for 5 minutes, you sit, you let your body decompress, you
Mhm.
ask, what do I need to know or what do I need to go into this next meeting? And then you move into the next meeting with intentionality. Having those moments of clarity allows you to anchor into how you want to lead and not being swayed by how other people want you to respond. And I think that's the most critical piece to leadership because if you're disconnected from yourself, you're just responding and reacting. And it takes a lot more energy to respond and react than it does to serve. And,
Mm.
so it's really important to stay connected to yourself.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So, Kiara, I want you to, with the audience, just in case they'd like to further the conversation with you, because this is a really rich conversation. So they may want to further the conversation with you or reach out to you for your services and products.
Yeah, so I'm absolutely on LinkedIn. It's Queirra with a Q. And you can also go to our website, theambitionstudio.com, where we have a host of resources, including the first lesson in our Balance Ambition audio course, free to download, Built to Lead, Not to Burn Out. It's a quick micro course that you can listen to while in the car to help you work through some of the foundational things so that you are expanding your capacity first and foremost. So connect with me there. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, but LinkedIn is the place that I'm playing right now.
Awesome. Yeah, LinkedIn's really great. Yeah, that's a
It's a
good
lot
place
of
to
fun.
find her. So listening, make sure you go out there and connect with Kiara today. So it has been a pleasure having you on the show today, Kiara. And again, I want to thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule, because I know you're busy, to share your heart, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your passion with us. We love your expertise that you shared, all the gold nuggets that we gleaned. And I just want to say that you are truly an impact leader. So thank you again for what you do.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. We could talk forever, and I really, really appreciate it.
That's the thing. We could talk forever.
We
We
could.
both know that. It's like we really could go on. So we got to get that dinner in though. So once we get that dinner, we can talk some more. So
All
I'm
right.
loving that. So as we wrap up, if you've enjoyed our time together, remember to share, like, and comment and subscribe to the podcast. You can connect with me through an email, VOE me today, or you can learn more about our services and resources at voicesoфencouragement.com. And remember, our mission is to empower minds and transform lives. And as we close out the show today, Ephesians 4:1, walk worthy of the call for which you were called.